So I remember when I thought that I would never be able to knit anything. I'm a crocheter and not a knitter. But then I discovered the circular knitting machine and I was able to make wonderful projects on it, like this 3-colored reversible beanie hat. So I'm going to show step by step how I make this on my 48 needle circular knitting machine. I'm using the Premier Anti-Pilling Everyday Bobbin. It comes with 3 skeins on one bobbin. They're 180 yards for each skein, and it's a number 4 medium weight yarn. This is a very nice silky yarn, and it works really nicely on the machine. So first we're going to cast on, starting at our white needle, and we go over and under each needle one time around the machine. And you don't want to do this extremely tight, and you don't want it super loose, or else that will not create a good foundation for your project. Once you're one time around, back at your white needle, put it all the way down into your yarn holder, and then I'm putting in the middle hole of the tensioner. Next, to start the project, I like to hand crank it a few times, about 5 rows. You can do a little bit more if you'd like. Now, when it's a thinner number 4 medium weight yarn, I can use my drill attachment, and it makes the project go a lot quicker. I can do one beanie hat in about a half hour. And so the first color is going to be 40 rows. If you are using a drill attachment, just make sure you don't use a high power drill. You want to get one of those smaller low powered drills because it can melt the plastic. So just FYI, I did that. Now we're going to change colors at our 40th row, and again we start that at our white needle using our second color. So the first color, we put the tail end into the inside of the machine, then we add in our second color. And then again, to start this, we're going to crank the first 5 rows or so the yarn doesn't slip off. Once you get that done, then I put in a loose knot, and this just helps secure in those tail ends so the project doesn't unravel. And then once we get those done, now we're going to do another 40 rows in our second color. Again, I'm using the drill attachment, but you do not have to if you do not want to. And then once your 40 rows are complete, so have done a total of 80 rows, we're going to add in our third color. So here's just a close-up of how that's done when you're adding in your color. You want to, if you want even rows, you want to start and stop it on the same needle. So I was starting this project all on the right side of the white needle to make sure my rows are even. If you're doing one color, that's not as important, but if you want very symmetrical rows, that is important. And then again, I hand crank around 5 rows or so. And then when I do the first color change, when it comes back around, I kind of hold those tail ends of the yarn too to make sure it doesn't slip out of that needle and I don't drop any stitches. And so I kind of do that a few times around, especially when it's more of a silky yarn. It can have a tendency to do that if you don't leave enough tail as well. And then once I have a few rows done, then I'll again do a loose knot. You'll come back after you have the project off the machine and completely secure them down, but you can just do it for a loose knot now. Once I get those 5 rows cranked around, you're going to do another total of 40 rows. So you did 40, 40, and 40 of each color, giving you a grand total of 120 rows for your hat. And this makes a really good, more one-size-fit-all adult beanie hat. If you have someone that has an extra large circumference head, you might want to add 10 or so more rows. Now to cast off, you want to leave a long tail of your project yarn, and you want to take it out of the yarn holder, and then you're going to crank it around, and you're going to pick up those stitches. So I start at my white needle, I crank it just a little bit around, and then I pick it up with my needle. Some people, you'll see them crank it all the way around one time without the yarn in there and then start picking it up. I find that I drop stitches easier doing it that way, so I like doing it right here and not cranking it all the way around. But don't do what I did and not leave enough tail yarn of my project yarn, and so I'm having to be really careful. So give yourself enough of a tail to pick up all of these stitches. Once it's off, that cast off, you pull the end of your project tail yarn and it makes like a drawstring effect, so it cinches up the hat here. And so before we cinch up the other end, we need to, this is the inside, this is the purl side of our project, and the outside is considered the knit side. And so we need to take in those tail ends of our project yarn where we added the different colors, and we want to secure down those with a knot. You don't want to pull it too tightly. You want to kind of make it an even stitch look throughout the project. And so you just roll it up in there until you find those tail ends and then do a knot. And so you can see there's kind of a hole because it's loose, but when you go to tighten it down, you'll be able to tell if you're doing it too light or too tight or too loose. So you could do either side as your project side. I personally prefer the knit side compared to the purl side, but either one is up to you. And then now we're going to stitch down the top like a drawstring. And then what we do is we fold it in on itself, and this is, we're doubling up our hat, so it has 2 layers. So I put in that tail end of the yarn through the hole, and then I pull it through. So now we've created a double layer hat, and this is how we make it reversible. And then now we want to close up this hole and secure in the tail end of our yarn so none of our stitches drop. So I pull it as tightly as I can with my hand, and then I put the tail end of the yarn on a needle and I do a knot, and then I sew back and forth in that top hole, and this just really helps to secure our yarn in place and secure that top hole where we cinched it down, and then I will knot it again to secure it. And now for the other end, we're going to take our yarn and find the tail end of our working yarn, and then again we're going to pull it like a drawstring and cinch it closed, and you just kind of have to fold up the stitches, because when you do the cast on and off like this with the drawstring, the fabric tends to want to roll and the stitches are a little bit looser up there. So you just have to take a moment to work them to the inside to get it all cinched up properly. And then don't forget the little tail end of your other end. You want to pull that through, and you can then knot them together so they stay together. And so I do a little knot on the tail end, weave it through, and then now I'm weaving kind of through both layers of the beanie hat with my needle, and then I knot both tail ends together. And I do this a few times. I just feel the more secure the better, to make sure your project doesn't unravel. And then I knot it again, and then I pull it through to the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing. Pull it through, and sometimes it could be a little thick there to get it through. And then I cut off any excess, and then I knot it even a few more times just to make sure. And now I just weave in my ends, and if any excess come out, you can kind of put them in between the 2 layers, or you can cut off any extra that you have. For a finishing touch, you can also add a pom-pom to the top of your beanie hat. So I get some extra yarn of the project yarn, and I double it up, and these little pom-poms I do have in my Amazon storefront. They have an elastic band that you can feed the yarn through, put it through your hat, and then you can tie it down in a bow. And I don't use a button for this one, and so you're able to reverse it. So there you go. There is our reversible beanie hat that was made on our 48 needle circular knitting machine. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like and follow for more. Happy crafting.